New York. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. From the rich to the poor, everyone loves New York. But it wasn't always like that. Back in the early 1970s, New York State was in $1 billion deficit and was near bankruptcy, which would mean that its finances would be taken over by the federal government. It was hard to think of New York without thinking of crime and poverty. New Yorkers were losing their jobs as well as hope. 300,000 workers were let go. Schools were closed down. Businesses were moving out of the city. In 1976, the city's garbage men went on strike. The city smelled so bad that some people took to wearing surgeon's masks on the street. Homicide, rape, and robbery had increased significantly from 10 years before. New York asked the federal government to back up their bonds, the money they borrow from banks to pay for the city workers. When then President Gerald Ford asked Congress to not help out New York State, the Daily News created the famous cover, "Ford to City, Drop Dead." Things were not looking good for New York. New York needed money, fast. The New York State Commerce Department realized that a great way to make money was in tourism, and New York had a lot to offer, with Broadway and the outdoor activities of upstate New York. At that time, New York spent less per person on tourism than any state in the country. With an unprecedented $4.3 million budget, the New York State Commerce Department began to construct a New York tourism campaign. They had hired advertising agency Wells Rich Green to come up with a campaign that would make people think of vacationing in New York City and state. Wells Rich Green took people's love for New York and incorporated it into their campaign. The agency came up with the now famous slogan, "I love New York," after listening to people's testimonials from people of other states. They would say things like, "We're from New Hampshire, but we love New York." From there, Wells Rich Green hired famed New York graphic designer Milton Glaser of Pushpin Studios. Founder and president of Pushpin Studios, Glaser had already created works including the legendary Bob Dylan poster and the revolutionary design of New York Magazine, which he co-founded. Glaser's first logo for the I Love New York campaign was of two lozenge shapes with the words "I love" in one shape and "New York" in the other. It was already being printed on t-shirts and posters when he was doodling in the back of a taxi and came up with a better idea. He immediately called New York's senior deputy commissioner, Bill Doyle, and told him that he had a better idea. Doyle was less than pleased because printing was already underway and it would be hard to get everyone together again to approve a new logo, but he agreed to look at it. He liked what he saw, and now Glaser's second logo, the I Love New York logo, is now the most frequently imitated logo in history. The state did not license the logo, which means other states and cities added their names to the logo. New York didn't mind because everyone knew the logo was New York's, and it was like free advertising. The ad agency also hired a songwriter named Steve Carman, who had previously written television commercial jingles for products such as the Hershey bars and Budweiser beer to create a song for the campaign. The song he wrote consisted of the words "I love New York" being sung 3 times in a row. The music was uplifting and joyous. It too became famous and accompanied I Love New York commercials for years. The idea was to use characters from Broadway singing "I Love New York."
At night in New York, all the stars come out. I love New York.
The commercials took the Broadway casts into the streets of New York and had them sing "I Love New York."
I love New York. I love New York. I love New York. I love New York.
I Love New York at Night show tours. 23 packages at special prices. For a free brochure, call toll-free 800-241-8444.
It was a huge success.
There were also commercials featuring celebrities such as Frank Sinatra, declaring his love for New York with a bunch of girls at the 21 Club.
I Love New York campaign turned around the fortunes of New York State and New York City. Tourists began to flock to New York and rediscover its magic. Banks and other large investors kept business in the state and started new businesses there. When in 1975, New York needed a federal loan to save it from bankruptcy, by 6 short years later, New York regained its solvency, and 2 short years after that, New York found itself in an economic boom that lasted through the 80s till today.
I love New York at night. There's something in the air.